The summer of 1891 had already claimed 3 calves and 2 good wells on the Bartee. Heat rose in shimmering waves off the Kalish Flats, turning every breath into something you tasted rather than breathed. Jackson Reed owned every acre a man could see from the porch of the main house, and still the land felt like it owned him. He was 37, wide-shouldered, quiet in the way men get when they've buried too many things they once loved. People in town said he talked more to his horses than to women. They weren't wrong. That July morning he was riding the north fence line alone, checking for breaks after a wind that had howled all night like a grieving widow. The sky was the color of scorched tin. His bay gelding, Cutter, moved slow, ears flicking at flies. Jackson kept one hand on the reins, the other resting near the butt of the old colt at his hip. Not because he expected trouble usually announced itself on the Barta, but because the land had taught him caution the way a good teacher teaches, with pain. He heard the sound before he saw her. A low, broken cry carried on the wind, not quite human, not quite animal. It came from the dry wash that cut through the mesa like a scar. Jackson reined Cutter left and nudged him down the steep bank. Gravel rattled under hooves. The cry came again, sharper, edged with panic. At the bottom of the wash, half hidden by mesquite and tumbleweed, lay a woman. She was on her back in the dust, knees drawn up, skirt rucked high around her thighs. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, dark hair plastered to her neck with sweat. One boot was missing. The other leg, the left, was twisted at an unnatural angle below the knee. Bone showed white through torn flesh and stocking. Blood had soaked the ground beneath her in a dark fan. Jackson swung down before Cutter finished stopping. He dropped the reins, ground-tied the horse, knew to stay, and approached slow, palms out. "Easy," he said, voice low the way he'd talk a spooked colt down. "I'm not gonna hurt you." Her eyes hazel shot through with gold locked on him. Pain had sharpened them to something feral. She tried to speak, couldn't. Another contraction of pain ripped through her, and she arched, fingers clawing at the dirt. "I can't," she gasped when the wave passed. "I can't close my legs." Jackson understood then. She wasn't just injured. She was in labor. Hard, fast labor, the kind that came too early or too wrong. The broken leg meant she couldn't move, couldn't even shift position. The baby was coming whether the mother could help it or not. He knelt beside her, careful not to touch until she allowed it. "Name's Jackson Reed. This is my land." "How long you been here?" "Since before dawn." Her teeth chattered. "Horse threw me. Legs snapped when I hit. Then the pain started." "You alone?" She nodded once, sharp. "Ran from Abilene 3 days back. Thought I could make it to my sister in Santa Fe." Jackson glanced at the sky. Sun was climbing. Heat would turn this wash into an oven by noon. He looked at her leg again, compound fracture, ugly, already swelling. If infection didn't take her first, shock or blood loss might. "We gotta move you," he said. "My place is 4 miles. I can carry you on the horse, but it's gonna hurt like hell." Her laugh was weak, bitter. "Already hurts like hell." He removed his hat, wiped sweat from his brow, then settled it back on. "What's your name?" "Maris," she swallowed. "Maris Callahan." "All right, Maris, I'm gonna lift you. You tell me if something's worse than it already is." She nodded. He slid one arm under her shoulders, the other under her knees, avoiding the broken place as best he could. She cried out once short, raw, then clamped her lips shut. He stood, cradling her against his chest. She weighed less than a good sack of oats. Her head fell against his shoulder. Breath hot against his neck. Cutter stood patient. Jackson managed to hook one boot in the stirrup, then swung up with Maris still in his arms. He settled her across his lap, sideways, injured leg supported along the horse's neck. She buried her face in his shirt when another contraction hit. "Hold on," he murmured. "We're going." He kept Cutter at a steady walk. Every step jolted her. Every jolt drew a muffled sound from her throat. Jackson talked the whole way low, steady nonsense about the weather, the price of beef, the new well he was digging behind the house. Anything to keep her with him, keep her from sliding into the dark place pain could pull a body. By the time they reached the ranch yard, the sun was brutal. His foreman, old Cal, saw them coming and ran out to meet them. "Lord God," Cal said, taking in the blood, the unnatural angle of the leg, the woman's ashen face. "What happened?" "Thrown, broken leg. Having a baby right now." Cal didn't waste breath on questions. "I'll get the bunkhouse cleared." "Send for Doc Hargrove?" "No time," Jackson said. "Baby's coming too fast. Get clean sheets, hot water, whiskey, and every clean towel we got. Move." Cal ran. Jackson carried Maris inside the main house instead of the bunk. The parlor was cooler, had a wide leather couch long enough to lay her out. He set her down gentle as he could. She immediately drew her good knee up, panting. "I can't stop it," she whispered. "It's coming now." Jackson knelt beside her. "Then we do this together." He had pulled calves before, dozens of them. He had set broken bones on men, stitched knife wounds, even delivered a foal once when the mare wouldn't stand. But never this. Never a woman looking up at him with eyes full of terror and trust in equal measure. Maris gripped his hand so hard he felt bones grind. "Tell me what to do," he said. She laughed once short, pained. "You're asking me? I've never done this either." He squeezed back. "Then we learn fast." Cal appeared with an armload of linens and a kettle steaming. Behind him came Rosa, the cook, who had birthed 6 of her own and lost 3. She took one look at Maris, crossed herself, and began issuing orders in rapid Spanish. "Boil more water," she told Cal. "Tear these into strips. You," she pointed at Jackson, "hold her steady. Don't let her thrash when it gets bad." Jackson nodded. Rosa knelt between Maris's legs, pushed the ruined skirt higher, and assessed with practiced hands. "Breach," she said flatly. "Feet first. Bad luck," Maris moaned. Another contraction rolled through her. She bore down instinctively. "No," Rosa snapped. "Not yet. You push too soon. You tear everything. Breathe through it." Jackson leaned close to Maris's ear. "Listen to Rosa. Breathe with me. In, out. Slow." She tried. Sweat poured down her face. Her broken leg lay useless. Every movement sent fresh pain spiking up her body. Jackson kept one hand locked in hers, the other braced behind her shoulders so she could curl forward when the urge came. Minutes stretched into hours. The room filled with the smells of blood, whiskey, wet linen, and fear. Rosa worked calmly, murmuring encouragement in 2 languages. Cal paced the hallway like a guard dog. Jackson never looked away from Maris's face. When the feet finally appeared, slick and blue, Rosa moved fast. She hooked gentle fingers, rotated, eased one leg, then the other. Maris screamed long, animal, then bore down again on Rosa's command. The shoulders came next. Jackson felt Maris's nails dig into his palm until skin broke. He didn't flinch. One last push. A small, wet body slid free into Rosa's waiting hands. Silence for one terrible heartbeat. Then a thin, furious wail split the air. Rosa laughed short, relieved, and turned over. "Girl," she said. "Small, but strong. Look at those lungs." She cleared the baby's mouth, wrapped her in clean flannel, and laid her on Maris's chest. Maris stared down at the tiny face, stunned. Tears tracked through the dirt on her cheeks. She touched one trembling finger to the baby's cheek. "She's perfect," she whispered. Jackson felt something crack open inside his chest, something he'd kept locked since his wife died in childbirth 4 winters back. He reached down slow and brushed a damp strand of hair from Maris's forehead. "You did good," he said, voice rough. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "We did good." Rosa was already cleaning the afterbirth, checking Maris for tears, preparing to set the broken leg. Jackson stayed where he was, one hand still holding Maris's, the other resting light on the baby's back. Outside, the wind had died, the heat pressed on, relentless. Inside, something new breathed for the first time. The days that followed blurred into one long fevered vigil. Maris drifted in and out of consciousness while the fever burned through her. Rosa stayed at the house round the clock, changing dressings on the broken leg, now splinted rigid with pine slats and wrapped in clean linen soaked in carbolic, and sponging Maris's forehead with cool well water. The baby, tiny but fierce, nursed when Maris could manage it and cried when she couldn't. Jackson named her Lark on the second night, because her cries reminded him of meadowlarks calling across the flats at first light. No one argued. He slept in the chair beside the couch, boots off but spurs still on, waking every time Maris stirred or the baby fussed. Cal and the hands kept the ranch running without him moving the herd to the summer graze, mending fence, digging post holes for the new corral. They asked no questions. They saw the woman on the parlor couch, the infant in the cradle Jackson had dragged down from the attic, and they understood that some things were bigger than branding schedules. On the 5th day, the fever broke. Maris woke clear-eyed just before dawn. Jackson was slumped in the chair, chin on chest, hat tipped over his face. Lark lay against her mother's shoulder, tiny fist curled under her chin, sleeping the deep sleep of the newly fed. Maris studied them both for a long minute, the man who had carried her out of death's reach, the child she had almost lost twice. She shifted slightly. Pain flared in her leg, but it was duller now, more ache than fire. She reached out and touched Jackson's knee. He woke instantly, hand going to the Colt at his hip before his eyes focused. "You're awake," he said, voice rough from disuse. "Seems so." Her smile was weak but real. "How long?" "5 days." "You had us scared. I'm sorry." "Don't be." He stood, stretched, joints popping. "You want water? Broth?" "Rosa made bone soup yesterday." "Water first." "Then maybe the baby." He fetched the tin cup from the side table, helped her sit up enough to drink without spilling. When she finished, he took Lark from her arms so she could settle the blankets. Maris watched him hold the infant careful, almost reverent. He had big hands, calloused, scarred from rope burns and barbed wire, yet he cradled the child like she was made of spun glass. "You're good with her," Maris said. "Had practice once." He didn't elaborate. She didn't ask. When Lark was settled back with her mother, Maris looked down at the splint. "How bad is it?" "Compound fracture. Tibia and fibula both." Rosa said it straight. "You'll walk again, but it'll take months. Maybe a limp after." Maris exhaled slowly. "I can't stay here that long." Jackson sat on the edge of the couch. "You can stay as long as you need. I have a sister in Santa Fe. She's expecting me." "I promised." "Santa Fe's 300 miles. You're not riding anywhere for a while." "I know." She looked at him. "But I can't impose forever." "You're not imposing. You're healing." She studied his face. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me." "You could have left me in that wash." "Most men would have." He rubbed a hand over his jaw. "Most men don't know what it feels like to lose someone in childbirth." The words hung between them. "Your wife?" She asked gently. 4 winters ago, same thing breach, too early. Neither of them made it." His voice stayed level, but his eyes darkened. "I got back from moving cattle too late. Found them both gone. Doc said there was nothing anyone could have done. I still hear her screaming sometimes." In dreams, Maris reached out, laid her hand over his. "I'm sorry." He turned his palm up, closed his fingers around hers. "When I found you in that wash, heard you say you couldn't close your legs, I knew exactly what was happening. I couldn't walk away, not again." She squeezed his hand. "You didn't." They sat in silence while the house woke around them, Rosa clattering in the kitchen, Cal's boots on the porch steps, the first lowing of cattle being driven to water. Later that morning, Rosa helped Maris bathe sponge bath, careful around the splint, and dressed her in one of Jackson's clean shirts over a borrowed chemise. Lark slept in the cradle. When they were alone again, Maris asked Jackson to help her to the window. She wanted to see the land that had saved her. He carried her easy, as though she weighed nothing, and set her in the big chair by the glass. The view stretched north and west, Rolling grassland, a windmill turning lazy in the breeze, distant mesas blue with distance. A hawk circled high overhead. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's hard," he answered. "But it's honest." She looked at him. "You're not married again." "No." "Ever think about it? Thought about it? Decided against?" "Why?" "Figured I'd already lost one family. Didn't want to risk another." Maris looked back out the window. "And now?" "Now I'm not so sure." She turned her head slowly. Their eyes met. Something shifted, quiet, irrevocable. That afternoon Jackson carried her to the porch so she could sit in the shade. Lark lay in a basket beside her. The hands rode past, tipped hats, smiled at the baby. Rosa brought lemonade. For the first time since Abilene, Maris felt something like safety. Evening brought the first real conversation. They sat on the porch after supper. Lark nursed, then slept. Jackson cleaned his rifle by lantern light. Maris watched the stars come out. "I need to tell you something," she said. He set the cleaning rod aside. "When I left Abilene, I wasn't just running from a bad husband. I was running from his family. They wanted the baby, said she was the last of the line. Said they'd take her one way or another." Jackson's hands stilled. "They know where you're headed?" "I didn't tell them about Santa Fe, but they know I have a sister. They'll look." He nodded once. "Then they'll find the Barty first. You'd fight for her?" "For both of you." Maris's eyes filled. "Jackson." He moved a kneel in front of her chair. "I'm not asking for promises. Not yet. But if they come, they'll have to go through me. And I don't go easy." She reached out, cupped his face. "Neither do I." He leaned in. Their foreheads touched. Neither kissed, not yet. But the space between them felt smaller than it had that morning. Weeks passed. Maris's league healed slowly. She learned to hobble with crutches Jackson carved from ash. Lark grew plump, smiled early, grabbed at anything that dangled: Jackson's hat brim, Maris's braid, the fringe on his vest. One evening in late August, with the sky the color of ripe peaches, Jackson came in from the barn carrying a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. "For you," he said. Maris unwrapped it. Inside lay a delicate silver locket on a fine chain. When she opened it, she found a tiny daguerreotype of Lark asleep in the cradle. "I had Cal ride to town," Jackson said. "Photographer owed me a favor." Tears slipped down Maris's cheeks. "It's beautiful." He fastened the chain around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin. She caught his hand, held it there. "I can't close my legs," she whispered, echoing that first terrible day. He smiled, slow, real. "You don't have to anymore." She pulled him down. This time they kissed, soft at first, then deeper, tasting of salt and promise and the long road that had brought them here. Outside, the windmill turned. Cattle lowed in the dusk. Somewhere far off, riders might still be coming. But in that moment, on the porch of the Barty, two people and one small girl chose each other. And the land, for once, seemed to approve.